Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and iTWireTV interview. Today, I'm joined by Peter Bauer. He's the CEO and founder of Mimecast. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Alex. You promised to call it a Mimecast and not Minecraft.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to a friend the other day and he said, "Oh, Minecraft!" I got all excited, and then it's like, "Oh, Mimecast." So that must happen a lot.
Oh, it does, gosh, and especially with kids.
Yeah.
And the number of people who work at Mimecast whose kids think their parents are so cool because they work at Minecraft. It's disappointing when they come to the family day. And
yeah. Well, you got to have like Minecraft computers set up, but they've got the layout of the Mimecast offices or something as the world they have to go through. You know,
be very cool.
So you can just unofficially merge the two of them together just for the kids for fun. Now, thanks for taking the time to be with us today. I thought we'd probably best start off by just asking if you could recap Mimecast for us and just give us the version of where you are in 2023 and why you're here in Australia.
Great. So Mimecast, a 20-year-old company this year, which is really exciting. Not a lot of tech companies grow to be 20 years old.
Yeah.
So we feel really fortunate to have had loyal customers, loyal staff, and a great market opportunity. And obviously, we do important work. We're best known, I think, for email security, but really our suite of solutions covers the broad scope of risk issues that users of digital communication in a corporate setting face. So we built an innovative cloud suite, I think, quite early in the cycle of cloud technology, and that's really helped us to be in a position to help the cyber resilience and security of now over 40,000 organizations.
Yeah, and obviously, having built it early, it would now be extremely sophisticated and mature and able to deal with all of these emerging threats.
Absolutely, and that's important because it is an arms race, and cybersecurity adversaries are very creative. There are very many of them, and they are able to collaborate with each other in sort of loosely coupled ways. And so as a single organization working on behalf of thousands of companies, we've really got to be on top of our game to stay ahead.
Absolutely. Now, as the CEO of Mimecast, you obviously would have a fascinating global bird's eye perspective on cybersecurity. So in order to be prepared and to act decisively, what is happening globally that is likely to have an impact on our shores?
Yeah, well, I think if we think about shores, there are no shores in cyberspace.
No.
So Australia, as all companies, you're on the internet.
Yeah.
It's one continuum, and adversaries don't particularly distinguish. They may, in the email sense or in the deception sense, create things that are thematic or focus on specific organizations in different places. But they may quickly learn information that they've been able to use successfully to go after a certain sector or an industry, and move between geographies with that quite effectively. But certainly, Australia being part of the Five Eyes, there's a level of kind of consistency amongst that group and an interest from a geopolitical perspective in all members of that.
And are you seeing any other trends originating in Australia that have yet to be seen elsewhere in the world that will have global repercussions, or is it sort of more or less the same wherever you go around the world, just the bad guys just always trying to find whatever chink in the armor to get through?
Yeah, well, what I did find interesting was the stated intent to be the most cyber secure nation by 2030. I spent a bunch of time thinking about that because I think it's a valuable statement of intent. It's a good rally cry. But I worry a little bit about private organizations somehow having a false sense of security that, threats are coming in 2031, because they're not. We're really in a knife fight today.
Yeah.
But also that somehow the government is going to be taking sort of responsibility for our cybersecurity, perhaps in the way that we might think about the government taking responsibility for our military security.
Yeah. Which, I mean, just quickly on that, it's only in the news as of yesterday, as we're recording this, that the government has floated the idea that should a company be under severe cyber attack, they can take control. It's not just for utilities, but actually they could take control of a big company and help them to sort out the problem, which is a huge undertaking from the government. Can they protect all businesses?
Well, it's a very, as a starting point, strong cybersecurity, it's a team sport. So collaboration, public-private collaboration, and certainly we've seen this in major breaches in the United States. There's a very strong kind of FBI cyber capability that can be helpful. I think the reality is governments are getting popped all the time too.
Yeah.
So do they have the better way of doing it? No, but the teamwork and obviously the reach of a government to be able to sort of compel organizations to disclose breach information, or perhaps to be able to get to understand more about what an attack has done in a particular environment in a way that perhaps another private organization wouldn't get that insight to. The long arm of law enforcement can be helpful. So I think coming in and taking over, maybe in a small under-resourced organization that might be necessary. But I'm not sure the government will always have the skills that outrank what perhaps a large private organization has.
I think you said it before, the governments get attacked, so they have problems defending themselves. So they need the help of the private organizations with those hard-fought and hard-won skills.
Yeah, very much a team sport.
Yeah. Now, I always like to think that customers are a company's best R&D division, and you would have had many requests, but what are some of the highlights over the years that's like, wow, that's so cool, and we're so glad you thought of that, and we're implementing it?
Yeah. Well, we have customer advisory boards, and we're really blessed to have highly engaged customers who understand the importance of securing the communications and the people sort of aspect of their digital workplaces. And so some of the innovations that we've benefited from in kind of collaborating with customers, things like API integration. So for a long period of time, we had good API capabilities internally that we leveraged, but our customers started saying to us, we've got these other building blocks in our cybersecurity architecture. We've got these SOAR environments for orchestration. We've got these endpoints. We've got these next-gen firewalls, these network security capabilities that we've bought from other vendors. And we're pretty sure that the intensity of the attack surface that Mimecast is looking after and protecting, that there's a lot of valuable intelligence that's coming at you guys as Mimecast. And I'm sure that's happening on a global scale across your network. Would be great for us is if what you're learning and what you're seeing there could be captured, and we could leverage that to make sure that our endpoint security, our network security, and so on is smarter. And that if you see something that needs to trigger a workflow, that could be used through automation to trigger some kind of orchestration process. And so our, what we call MESH, or the Mimecast Extensible Security Hooks, it's an acronym.
MESH, yeah, very cool.
Is really a response to many of those conversations with customers and inspired by their needs.
Now, with 2023 set to be a difficult year due to extremely emboldened cyber criminals, as we've just been discussing, and also the problems of high inflation, soaring energy costs, and more, what is your prediction for the types of cybersecurity challenges that we'll see this year? I mean, it's kind of like trying to figure out what the next zero-day or unknown threat is, but with all of your experience, you probably have a few ideas.
Well, I think, these things are hard to predict.
Yogi Berra said that it's always difficult to predict the future. I mean, he said predictions are difficult, especially when they're about the future.
Yeah, it's true. But if you look at some of the emerging technologies that are available to all people, it's interesting what things like generative AI, you and I spent some time looking at some of the software and some of the devices and chatting, before
this interview,
the camera was rolling. These are all productivity enhancing tools, and so things like ChatGPT, for example, that's a great productivity enhancer for creative people, or maybe students trying to whiz through an essay.
Their essays or whatever,
but equally, one of the great levels of friction for producing creative content is that it sort of, historically at least, takes a bunch of time and thinking and customization. It's the same with highly targeted scams and
malware
and cyber attacks. So actually, malware and machine generated, even polymorphic stuff, we've become quite good at defending against those things. So detecting the attacks that maybe go after technology, and when they're going after people, the machine generated attacks tend to be, they may be thematic, but they're still broad based. So let's have a look at a scam that's sort of pretending to raise money for flood relief in some part of Australia.
Yeah.
So that it's targeted and certain people are going to be inclined to click on that. Whereas if they just blasted out sort of, special...
The scattergun approach.
Special deal on photocopier.
Yeah.
Like, most of us are going to go, that's of no interest.
Yeah.
However, let's say we wanted to, we sat down in a room and we said, let's create a scam that's going to go after one of us. And we had time to ask us a bunch of questions. We find out, where you going on vacation, what kind of car do you drive, what school does your kid go to, where do you like to have dinner on when you go out for dinner. You get a bunch of data points. You could create something that could be quite compelling on an individual basis.
Yeah, super targeted spear phishing.
Exactly, but that takes time, that takes effort to be that specific.
Yeah.
Now, if you think about generative AI, does that have the ability to go and gather that information, research an individual, and craft something? And not just that, but learn what works.
Yeah.
And then implement more of that and pursue that and do that at scale. And I'm not sure, we benefit because there's a cost associated with generating those scams, and our defenses are able to make certain assumptions that the majority of stuff that seems contextual is probably good and the minority is bad. But what if that flips around? So if you were to go and walk down what's one of these fancy shopping streets in
the QVB, the Strand, Pitt Street Mall.
What if you walk down there and the majority of watches, Rolexes there were fakes and the minority were real? Well, it would just it would destroy the ecosystem. It would change the value of everything in that environment, and people would no longer be able to confidently
no more trust.
Do exactly. So we have to think about where could this be going, and then how do we deal with a different ratio of trust? How do we assure trust? Because if you can't trust that environment, like where are we in the digital workplace?
Well, trust is everything. I mean, ChatGPT has already been tricked into creating polymorphic malware, not in one go, but by getting different parts of it, which the hackers could then join together. And then, presumably, I mean, Mimecast will have its own AI to help embolden and empower your software to fight against the AI threats that are generated by the bad guys. But I mean, it's the good and bad. Except instead of organic brains doing it, it's organic brains, enhanced by AI.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the story of technology.
It's complex.
So Mimecast is a supporter of cyberminds.org. I saw the founder, Peter Coronius, was the #2 speaker on the day, which is a great thing to see. Really, obviously, this is the world's first mental wellness program, so it's great to see you supporting it. So, what are your thoughts on that? And clearly this is something new that hasn't been thought of before, yet is really important because people burn out, and the quest for retaining talent, even beyond any sort of stresses from cybersecurity, is well known in the post-pandemic era.
Yeah, I think firstly, mental health is such a... The good news is that mental health is becoming destigmatized.
Yeah.
I think you and I grew up probably in an era where it wasn't easy to have conversations about it. If somebody was suffering from a mental health challenge, there was shame and things associated with that actually compounds the problem. And I think we don't take mental health for granted anymore. We understand that mental health is a fragile thing, and particularly in the stresses that we live in today's age, we've got to have more compassion. We've got to be organizations. We've got to be communities that allow people to be their best in those.
Well, you want people to be fighting the bad guys at their best, not at their most stressed and at their worst, in a fight or flight mode. They can never switch off and in a burnt out state, because that is what gets these people to leave after a couple of years, and they're lost to the industry, lost to the company.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think first about the individual and the a person that's suffering from stresses and mental health challenges. And then secondly about, okay, well, what are the implications for an industry? And the cybersecurity industry it's such an important industry for us to have, and to have staffed with talented people, capable people, people that are on top of their game, people who are able to think calmly and creatively to keep us all safe, to keep our information safe, to keep our critical infrastructure safe. So I think this intersection of mental health, and Mimecast has historically, inside our organization, put a lot of emphasis on mental well-being for our employees so that they can be their best. But the cybersecurity industry overlaying that to make sure that we are taking care of our defenders, because they live with stresses that, while may not be percussive or kinetic in the military sense, the brain can interpret the stresses and the pressures of those. And we learned a lot from Peter Coronius today as he presented. Tonight we've got the Cyberminds Gala dinner. We continue to learn more about what the weight of being a cyber defender actually can mean, and how we need to support and create emotional and mental brainware infrastructure to help people recover and respond well. Yeah.
Well, I mean, just to conclude on that point, the IRS protocol that Cyberminds uses is something that helps people to understand, deal with, and not allow the burnout to wipe them out, and they can reset. And it's something, when I first heard about it, it was like, wow. So it's really great to see major security companies like yourself taking it fully on board. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so important not to take mental health for granted, in the same way that you don't take physical health for granted. There are constructive things you can do, and there are the forms of neglect that will lead to poor physical health. It's the same with mental health. And you have to consider the environmental stresses and pressures that comes under, and make sure that you're taking in a good amount of training, and you're building an environment where people can really thrive.
Yeah. So how do you see Mimecast evolving over the next couple of years? And then after that, is there anything else about, or even before that, is there anything else about Mimecast that we should know that we haven't already discussed?
Well, we've been on an interesting journey as a company, and one of the things I find fascinating is how's the destiny of tech companies allow them to be managed and led to keep innovating and keep doing the valuable things that we need to do for customers. And so for me, it's been a great joy to be part of our company from when there was 2 of us as founders up to now more than 2,000 people, but going through different investment rounds, being founder funded, angel funded, venture funded, growth equity funded. We were a public company on NASDAQ for about 6.5 years. And now we're a private company once again with a fabulous private equity firm called Permira, based out of London, which took us private just before the May last year. Yeah,
right. Okay. Yeah.
So we came through the pandemic and popped out the other side. And actually, frankly, right now, it's pretty tough being a tech company in the public markets.
Yeah.
It's sort of
fluctuating wildly.
Yeah, exactly. So this allows us to continue to innovate, focus on customers, focus on innovation, which is good. So.
Now, as we get towards the end of the interview, I always like to ask a couple of questions about you. It's always fun to learn a bit about the people I'm speaking to. So I always start by asking if you could please share a memory of your first computer.
Well, I remember my mother came to me, I must have been about 9 years old. And so when was that? 1982. And she said her mother, we weren't a family that had a lot of money, but her mother had given her some money and said, you can spend this on the grandchildren.
Yeah.
She said, you have a choice. You can either get a bicycle or you can get a computer. And of course I knew what a bicycle was.
Yeah.
Probably had a pretty dodgy one before that. I was, well, what on earth is a computer?
Yeah.
She described this thing. She said it's going to have it'll have a screen and buttons on it, and I couldn't really figure out what this thing was going to be or what it meant.
Yeah.
But we didn't have a television in our house at the time. We were one of the few families that didn't have one for, probably it was an expensive item to have. And so I said, wait, hang on a second. The screen thing, what is that? No, well, it'll be a small television. I was like, we're going to get a television. Yes, computer. So as a result of that, I wasn't particularly interested in the computer, but I was really keen to get the TV. But this was, we got a BBC Micro, 32K BBC Micro. And I just fell in love with it.
You quickly fell in love with it.
Oh, yeah. And we were literally with a cassette tape, typing in programs and playing little games. And I remember going to a little trade fair in the little town I lived in, South Africa. And they had this thing called Beltel, which was obviously like some precursor, British precursor.
It was a bulletin board system or something, wasn't it?
Exactly.
So I used to run one of those, pre-internet.
Yeah. So it was a dial-up.
Yeah.
It just blew my mind at age 10 or whatever I was, that a computer here on this table could be talking to a computer in England.
Yeah.
I was in Port Elizabeth in South Africa. So like that, I got the bug. I got the tech bug at that stage. And obviously, 10 years later, came back into IT.
So what's the story of the founding of Mimecast? I mean, there must have been some point where you encountered a virus or malware or some email bug for the first time, and you must have thought, either at that time or not long after, got to create a company to deal with this. So what's the short version of that story?
Yes. So I was working as an email system engineer and as a tech support engineer in the 90s, and I almost staggered into email by accident because I wanted to do this Microsoft Certified System Engineer thing.
MCSE.
That's the one, yeah. and through a scheduling kind of mess up, I landed up doing the Microsoft Exchange, well, the precursor to Exchange, which was Microsoft Mail 3.2 or something like that, and then Exchange 4, which was the first actual client-server exchange. But I'd gotten into that, and I remember I was contracted at South African breweries, and the mail server there that I was supporting would dial up the internet periodically and download mail. It was a sort of store and forward mechanism.
Yeah, like the way BBSs were.
Exactly, and corporate email would come in and out like that. And one day, all hell broke loose because there was a virus on the network. It's like, where has this thing come from? Come in, come in through email. And we had the whole IT team. We were on the phone trying to figure out, what is this thing?
Yeah.
And everyone was learning. There's no Google to go search. What is this? We were talking to some consultants put us onto some cybersecurity firm out of, I believe it was Finland or something like that. It was some remote part of the world, and these people were telling us what we had to do, and then some extremely expensive software got couriered down to us on
floppy disks.
Yeah, and we had to go run around and go and try and find this thing and clean it up.
And obviously you did at the time, right?
Yeah. Well,
but that's...
Who knows if we did?
But you were back in business.
The Finnish folks got a lot of money.
Yeah.
We got a lot of work to do. But and I can't recall what the virus was actually doing. But that
was a catalyst.
It was no good. Yeah.
For thinking that.
And so that was one of the formative thoughts that helped me understand what was starting to be at stake and what was starting to be at risk as we took our communication and as we put our networks on the internet, as we opened these things up and adopted, TCP/IP and all the other protocols, SMTP, and we allowed free-flowing connectivity. So
where does the name Mimecast come from? Because that would have predated Minecraft by, I don't know, many years.
Exactly.
You were there first.
Yeah. We should at least get free licenses to Minecraft. So Mime is as you probably know, it's an acronym for Multi-Purpose Internet Mail Extensions, and it was really the innovation that allowed email to move from what was a postcard to an envelope, which means you could put an attachment in it. And the group that created that standard, one of the founding members of that group, I think there was a pair of them, Dr. Nathaniel Borenstein, actually rang us up a couple of years later and said, hey, you named your company after our standard. And he had been focused on developing the standard because he wanted to be able to have photos of his grandchildren one day This was in the 80s.
Yeah.
One day he knew grandchildren, we hope grandchildren were coming. He has wonderful grandkids now. To be able to transport those and see those via email.
We take it all for granted now, but back then it was brand new. It was
And so obviously that's standard now. If you go into your internet browser, MIME types are all there.
Yeah.
So the standard is ported beyond email. And so when we needed to, naming a company is notoriously difficult.
Yeah.
And my co-founder and I were batting lots of names around, and it just came out of my mouth one day, Mimecast. And Mime because it tells the story of email and files and content.
Yeah.
And then cast because it's a few things. To deliver.
Broadcasting, yeah.
Exactly, and we do an awful lot of content delivery.
Yeah.
And also, we're an archiving company. I cast iron strong.
Yeah.
And so on. But if I had my time again, I would come up with a name that Americans and the rest of the world say the same because cast is not cast.
Yeah.
And so I always, I do radio interviews in the States. I'm forever screwing it up, like Mimecast, but that's the story of the name, and I think it's
well, it's stuck. It has done well. So now, my second last question to you is: what is some of the best advice you've received in life to help you get where you are today?
Well, my father has about, I think, 6 or 7 academic degrees, various bachelor degrees, masters, and PhD even. And I was looking at he was in education. He was a high school teacher and then an educational psychologist. And he showed me his business card, because in education, you kind of lay it all out there, in academia. I was looking at all these words, and he said, Peter, this is merely evidence of a misspent youth. I was thinking, well then let me not go to university.
Yeah, that's it. Spare me.
And so that gave me a sense of permission to say my interest is in building a business, and maybe what a better way to learn the craft of company building than to create a business.
Yeah.
And so Mimecast, my third company, by far the biggest, and the other two were sort of 3-year journeys kind of each. But I skipped formal tertiary education. I did do a diploma. It took me about 3 years. The 3-year diploma took me about 10 years of part-time study to kind of grind through it.
You were too busy building the business, right?
Exactly. You can learn a lot. I'm not knocking studying or tertiary education, but for me, getting straight into the working environment, and it's been, him giving me kind of tacit permission to do that was valuable and good advice.
Thanks, Dad.
Exactly.
So what is your final message to iTWire viewers and readers, and to your current and future customers and partners?
Well, I think we're responsible for the workplace is now the digital workplace. We don't say digital workplace because it's kind of redundant.
And it's hybrid, and it's home, it's here, it's anywhere in the world.
Exactly. The pandemic pushed us even further into it, and it's a great enabler.
Yeah.
But we have to be focused on how do we protect it, and we cannot take that for granted, because it's going to get more and more complicated to be able to trust what is in that digital workplace. And so we're very focused on not one single silver bullet that's going to fix it, but it's a continuum of interrogating content, interrogating purported identities, training people, giving people additional visibility into the sort of the forensics and the provenance of content and interactions that they're having. And we all have to raise our games to participate. We can't be naive in a digital workplace environment.
And as we now know with Cyberminds, making sure we look after the mental wellness of our team so that they don't burn out after 26 months and become dog walkers or accountants, but stay with the company, train the new talent, nurture them, and build an even stronger company for the decades to come.
Absolutely. And if they need to take a break and be a dog walker, we need dog walkers too. So.
Absolutely. Well, Peter Bauer, the CEO and founder of Mimecast. It's been a great pleasure speaking with you today. I wish you the best of success for the rest of the tour in Australia and for the rest of 2023, and I do hope we can speak again.
Wonderful. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. Bye-bye.